Okay everybody, following on from our workshop earlier, we are going to go through a step-by-step of how you use HDR Pro to make a HDR image in Photoshop Creative Cloud. This is going to be our starting image, which is a picture of St Peter's Church in Wolverhampton City Centre. And we're going to run our bracketed shots through HDR Pro to create a HDR final image that we've done a little bit of finishing up with on Photoshop, where you have a finished version that's had a bit of a filter put on the top, but that's our original version, or our HDR version developed from our original version. And so to do that, I'm going to show you step by step. So go back to our original image. What we're going to do is go straight up to the top to start with, and we're going to go to File, and then from File we go down to Automate, and from Automate you want to pick Merge to HDR Pro. Click on that, which will give us these the dialog box where we want to find our bracketed exposures that we've taken to turn into our HDR shot. So we're going to click on Browse, and in there you will go through your computer and all of your hard drives to find your bracketed shots. These are the ones that I've got here all set up for us. So you can see from looking, I've got the starting photograph here, and I have in the bracket an image that's been 1 stop overexposed, an image that's been 2 stops overexposed, an image that has been 1 stop underexposed, and an image that has been 2 stops underexposed. So I'm going to highlight all of these in the bracketed series, press OK, and they appear in my files box, and then we're just simply going to press OK. And you'll see from the layers tablet that it's running through the bracketed exposures to try and make some decisions on my HDR image. Some of the colour conversions are going to be a bit different, it's going to throw them off. But here we are, it's letting us set our manual exposure variation through here. So what I'm going to do is go to my original image. So these shots here, this is letting me click through the 5. So that's the first one, which is 2 stops under, 1 stop under. That's the starting shot. That's the 2 stops over, and that's the 1 stop over. So back to the starting one. The EV on that one's exposure value there was 0. The one there was +2. The one here was overexposure, so that was +1. Back to the other end, that was -1. So 1 stop under, and then here we had 2 stops under 2. And press OK. And that's going to run them, and it's going to give you, like all HDR, a very, very, very HDR image, which isn't particularly ideal. I'm going to click and basically work my way down this side panel down here, just adjusting HDR to taste. Now, HDR is one of those things where it kind of, it's a lot of personal choice, personal preference in the image that you actually want. Some people like a very HDR image, some people like a not so HDR image, but you can see down the bottom the different exposure values, and we're going to simply just go through these menus to see what we like. So this is my settings. First off, I'm going to remove any ghosting from the shots, and straight away that's made quite a dramatic look. Presets give you here a lot of different options of things you could do. So for example, if you wanted to do a black and white, you could pick a monochromatic preset, so instantly you've got a black and white that you can then tweak. I'm just going to scroll through, and you can see a couple of different examples of the different ones, and again it's kind of a personal preference as to what you actually want. Photorealistic. So that's probably the one that I'm going to start with as my basis in here. I'm just going to knock the strength of it down a little bit to not make it so over the top. Playing around with the sliders, just adjusting it a little bit. So bringing some of that detail. Still quite saturated here, so I'm going to bring that saturation down much more to give it a bit more of a natural kind of look. We can see it's made quite a difference already. There's lots of tone going on in the picture at the moment. And the best way with most Photoshop is just kind of just have a bit of a play around with it, really, and play with the sliders, see what for your kind of personal tastes works. It's really doing a lot of work. This was the problem area here where the sky on the original was completely blown out, but it's bringing in quite a nice little bit of detail for me in here. So I'm just gradually, gently changing these settings in here just to see what is working for me. Bring those highlights down just a little bit, because with this one I'm really trying to show off that HDR effect, which isn't for everyone's taste, but for the purpose of our little demo relating to the class that we did, I wanted to show that HDR effect that I was doing. And basically you're going to just play yourself down all of these little sliders. There's not a great deal of many to choose from, but you work your way down, pick whichever kind of settings that you want to play around with, and you can see there's a bit of a difference already in there, but that's giving us something to work with. A nice range of tones in there. It does have a very kind of HDR look at the moment. If you decide you don't like what you're doing, you can always jump back and change. You can go back to some of these presets, have a look which work, which don't work. Some are a bit kind of, but it's a case of playing around that little bit and seeing what it is that works, what doesn't. So that's quite a nice starting point there. I'm going to just bring some of that shadow detail up a little bit more because that's darkened it down. Keep the highlights down. Exposure a little bit in there. So again, as you see, I've just kind of done two little quick edits, playing around. I've got a nice amount of tones in there. That one I'm pretty happy with, and I think it's quite a nice balance, something I can work with in Photoshop to finish it up. So I'm just going to press OK in the bottom right hand corner, and that is going to take the image. It is merging the HDR and creating that HDR file for me, and then it will take it and it will open it in Photoshop. So there is my original. I'll close that on we had before. So we've got, that was our original shot that we took in the camera as metered. You can see there's loads of detail missing out in the sky that's in there. There's very, very dark shadows in there. The little HDR edit you can see has brought lots of detail back in the sky and really giving it some punch. And now we're into Photoshop, where you can play around with it and you can edit it using all of the Photoshop skills that you've developed so far. Perfect example of things that you might want to do. For example, up here, this bit of the tree nearest to me is kind of causing a bit of a distracting element, so that might be one of the first things that I know I want to get rid of. So using the lasso tool, I'm going to quickly draw around it very loosely, and then press Shift and F5 to fill it. Make sure it says Content Aware, and I'm going to press OK. And it's going to run, and there you go. Quick as anything, using the beauty of Content Aware Fill, has got rid of that detail in there. And then once you're down here and you've done that, you can start thinking about if you want to add any adjustment layers and things to your image. So anything that you do from this point would be final touches. You can spot heal any marks you might have. You can up the contrast, lower the contrast. The possibilities for how you make the image your own are completely up to you. But that is a quick whistle-stop tour of taking some bracketed shots and then stitching them together in HDR Pro on Photoshop and creating a HDR image where you can really take quite a washed out, stark original and merge all those exposures to give yourself something quite nice and final. And I'll share the two final images at the end of this video, but by all means check out some of the resources, shoot some bracketed images, or you can use these example images which will be on the VLE for you to do the exact same steps that I've done to help you out with your work. But give it a go and hope that one helps and has worked nicely for you. So see you next time.
Okay, so let's review our images. Here we have our original starting image. Next up is our first HDR Pro image that we did. And then here's a little variant that I did, which is a little bit more subtle. And finally, we went for a really dramatic, high contrast, black and white HDR image to finish things off and give it a bit of variation. Thanks for checking that out. Follow us on social media and we'll catch you next time.